It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I had the privilege to interview the Ohio State fencing head coach, Donald Anthony Jr. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about your coaching experience and how you got started?
So I would say I'm not a traditional coach. My coaching experience really started when we started a foundation in New York, the Peter Westbrook Foundation. That was probably about 30 years ago, and it was a bunch of us had retired, we're about to retire from our competitive careers, and we all took a different class. And I started with the beginner foil class, which was a bunch of little kids, and that was always my favorite class. I went on to start a couple of different programs where I would coach, primarily with disadvantaged youth. And then I started working with I became president of USA Fencing, and I was working with some of our elite athletes. And somewhere along the line, I ended up coming to Ohio State, the athletic director, and the is someone who I've known for a long time, Gene Smith, along with the sport AD, Kerry Fagan, who I hadn't met, but I'd helped them find their coach 20 years ago, and who changed the program around, Vladimir Nazlimov, one of the greatest coaches that's ever lived, and greatest fencers. And I was helping them find someone, and Gene asked, he said, so why don't you take the job? And I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm not Vladimir. And as he said, what I need you to do is be the CEO of my fencing program. And I'm like, oh, that I can do. So that's how I got to be, that's my coaching career.
That's a wonderful story. Can you talk about what you have accomplished in your 3 years at Ohio State?
I approach my coaching at Ohio State like I would any other organization that I've run, whether it's one of my businesses, whether it's helping a client from a consulting standpoint, or USA Fencing, or being involved in the International Fencing Federation. What I look at is creating a culture of excellence, a culture of leadership, and really establishing, values that all of us can live by, and really a high performance culture. So in the period I've been here over the last 2 seasons, I've worked diligently. One, creating a vision for the organization, working with the athletes. A lot of those athletes had been brought in from the previous coaching staff, who I had worked with closely from the outside. And they were somewhat traumatized by losing the people who had been here. So the first thing is to really build, trust, develop that relationship. In first year, we were able to make progress. Last year, I would consider my second year was the best. We were, top 3 in the country. I feel as though we won our conference championship. We were on our way to winning a national title. And I think that was really based upon getting the leadership on the team, to getting everybody on the same page, working extremely hard. We had a strength and conditioning coach that worked with us, actually came out of track and field, from jumpers and sprinters, and the energy he brought, and it allowed us, because to be successful in fencing, you have to have elite athletes, but you don't win that championships with just the elite. You have to have a whole team. And he was able to help us really build that base where everybody was on the same page. And I would say that's probably the biggest accomplishment, getting that consistency and allowing all of our athletes to feel as though they were part of something bigger than them.
That's so wonderful that you brought in supporting staff like the track coach. Can you talk about your time as the vice president of the International Fencing?
Federation?
Yes, the federation.
So I actually had not planned on being involved in administration after my 4 years of being secretary of USA Fencing from 2000 to 2004. In 2012, I sort of got drafted to be part to really run for president. I was elected. And part of what ended up happening after that was that the International Federation really wanted to know who the president of USA Fencing was. Before, the previous president was not involved in the international arena. So I ended up being on the executive committee of the International Federation for 4 years. And then 4 years later, I was selected by the executive committee to be a vice president. And in that time, I've really worked the same types of things that I have done in other areas, is really bring the expertise that I can from the standpoint of understanding the culture of the sport, understanding the differences in the culture of the different federations and individuals that work within our sport, and trying to create a collaborative environment where we can be on the same page as far as how we move fencing forward. We're fortunate to have a president who is very focused on the care and the development of fencing. And the part that I focused on most is how do we promote the sport? How do we get better visibility? And and then from just a general play, how do we grow the number of participants in that sport? And one of the things that I've done a lot of is really evaluating new federations that have fencing and are ready at that point to be members of the FIE. So I've looked at a federation in Angola. I've looked at a federation in Pakistan. I've gone to American Samoa, and really gotten a chance to see those people and understand what can they bring to our sport. So I feel as though I've been a good ambassador, as well as internally really working on building the collaboration and consensus around the things that we need to do to grow the sport of fencing internationally, globally.
Can you talk about being the founder and president of the SwordSport LLC?
Yes. So as a competitive fencer back in the 80s, I was looking at our national championships, which I was competing in, and I'm like, why are we in a very dark gym in the middle of New Jersey with no spectators and nobody even knowing that we're here? So at that point, I decided that promotion of fencing was going to be one of my lifelong goals. And SwordSport is a promotion and production company. We have the historical distinguished of having been the first company to ever live stream a world championships for fencing from South Bend, Indiana, in 2000 on dial-up. But that started the ability to really take the production value of fencing to that next level. We staged events to demonstrate how you could actually. The challenge I've always had with fencing is that people tend to do fencing for fencers as opposed to fencing for a broader audience. The sport happens very fast. The rules are not the easiest to understand, but if you package it right, you can make it a very easy sport to understand. So SwordSport has we've been a producer of sports. We promoted events, we've staged events, and then we've collaborated with both USA Fencing and the International Federation to increase the production value for the sport. Currently, our Grand Prix series, which started in probably 2014, the production value of that is a very high product. And now it's just a matter of continuing to grow that, make it more accessible to audiences that are not familiar with the sport, and really doing those types of things that people like what they see, but to watch something once is not enough. You want somebody to come back. People don't come back to watch, the sports just because they are interested in just the sport. Typically, they're coming for the story. They're coming for, who do they have an affinity with, whether it's the athlete or the team. So we're working on building those types of things up. But it's been a continuum over 20 years of taking something very small, doing, as I said, a video or a live stream on dial-up to now multi-camera production that, goes around the world, via satellite.
That's so wonderful. Can you talk about what you've built for the culture of Ohio State fencing?
I would say that the biggest thing that I've built for Ohio State fencing culture is um, a culture of leadership, a culture of meritocracy, where you're respected for what you bring to our team, uh, and the understanding that we're all in this together. I've also, I feel as though, been successful in some of our recruiting efforts, especially last year, where we were able to bring some top flight athletes, both domestically as well as from, internationally. And I think that that's something we've always had a history, and I say we because when I came to Columbus in 1997, my mentor and when I say my godfather in the sport, Chava Palagi, immediately told me to go over to Ohio State and help the current coach with her Sabre program. So I've been involved from that standpoint. But the one thing that I feel as though we've done very well is recruited athletes from our zone, as opposed to really depending on a lot of the elite athletes coming out of Europe. We still have elite athletes out of Europe, but we've combined that where I think we're a very diverse team. We're a team that has built a culture around accepting our differences and really building on those differences and embracing those differences. And I think that that's probably a big factor in our success.
How many NCAA fencing titles do you have at Ohio State?
The university's won three titles. It was sort of a thing with the previous coach, Vladimir Nazlimov. He would always win every Olympic year. So he won in 2004, 2008, and 2012. 2016, they missed it. They didn't qualify in NCAA championships. The maximum number of fencers you can qualify is 12, and that's two per weapon per gender, and they only qualified 11. And he still managed to finish second, and almost it was, I think, 4 or 5 points from winning the title with short one fencer. So, and I would say that 2020 would have been another title for us if we just had an opportunity to compete without COVID. There were only 3 teams that qualified, 12, and we had a very senior team with a lot of repeating All-Americans. So I feel pretty good about that, but now we just have to wait and see what the next year brings.
Can you talk about fencing in the Big Ten and what that is like for some of your athletes?
So fencing in the Big Ten, we are not a conference sport for the Big Ten. We fence in the Midwest Fencing Championships. We have Big Ten schools in our conference or in fencing. You have Northwestern, which is actually in our conference. Penn State is not in our previous conference. We're actually forming a new conference where Penn State will be part of it. So we have those 3 schools that compete for the Big Ten. But I think the biggest thing right now is that we're looking and hoping that some of, I know University of Illinois is looking at possibly bringing a program back. They've had a program in the past. Michigan is a very, very strong club team. At some point, I think when the current coach there, who doesn't really want to be part of NCAA world, Michigan may decide to move in, but we're still trying to build enough schools in the Big Ten so we can have a Big Ten conference. As of right now, we fence for the Midwest Conference, which actually included Notre Dame, which is a dominant power as well. They've moved to the ACC, So now we want to see if we can get the Big Ten to be a conference. They only require 4 schools in the ACC for a conference championship. The Big Ten requires 6.
Can you talk about the recruitment process for the fencing program and what that is like?
I would say the recruiting process is probably what I have learned most about as being a head coach. It was sort of funny after our first year. We went out to recruit and we were talking to seniors, and we were like, "Oh, why are all they already committed?" We didn't realize that you start talking to them when they're juniors and sophomores. Well, actually not sophomores, but you start looking at them when they're sophomores. You don't talk to them yet. So our process is we look around the world. Fortunately, USA Fencing is one of the dominant fencing powers in the world now. We couldn't always say that. So we look both domestically and internationally. We look at the internet, the junior and cadet circuits. The cadet circuit is under 17. The junior circuit is under 20. And we look at, the results of the different athletes. So that gives us a sense of it. And then we're really fortunate in that we have a strong coaching staff where we have our director of operations as a referee internationally as well as domestically. Gives us an idea of what the athletes look like. Our foil coach was in Italy for 17 years. He's so he knows the European circuit. Our saber coach was coach of the Belarus team, so he knows the senior as well as the junior cadet circuit. So, and then, fortunately, I've been able to identify a talent as well. And then we start looking at, who's going to be culturally a good fit for us. We start getting to know them. We find their personalities, because we know what we're looking for. We're looking for individuals that want to be part of a team that are good fencers. We look for those who are elite fencers. Last year, we brought in a young man from Hungary who was on the World Championship team as well in épée. We brought in a woman who was 2016 on the 2016 Olympic team from Mexico. A young man who was a bronze medalist in the Cadet World Championships and participated in the Youth Olympic Games. And then Montserrat Vivero, we found her at the Junior Cadet World Championships, and then we watched her through the Pan American Games and the World Championships. So, this is the process of identifying someone. You start having those conversations, and then it's a process. Diego Cervantes, the foil fencer from Mexico, we started talking to him when we were in Havana. Took us almost another year before we were able to get him, on campus. But it was definitely worth it. And you create those relationships, and during that process, you identify is this person sharing the values of what you want in your team? Are they going to have the chemistry with the other people who are on the team already? Are they going to be an asset? And then we look for that, so we look for our elite fencers, and then we look for that really strong group of individuals that are very strong and that we can build. We look for freshmen that have the gifts, have the talents, and now with, a good program and great coaching, by the time they are a senior, they can be contributing to the team.
That's wonderful. Can you talk about, of course, being one of the only sports that can recruit domestic and international? What is that like?
Well, I mean, I think it's really fortunate from the standpoint that we have that broad group of young people to work through. It's also a challenge because you have to make sure that they have, their TOEFL scores. There's, understanding the difference between the education system in the U.S. and in some of the other countries. But within the world of sports, at least Olympic sports, the key advantage for the U.S. Olympic Committee and our national governing bodies is the NCAA system. So we know that is how we develop our athletes, to go out and represent Team USA. And then also the athletes that come here help be part of that process by the training and the participation and the competitions that we have. I think the biggest thing that is required when when you're recruiting internationally is that you have to travel. You have to go there. You've got to meet them. Fortunately, there are also international events hosted in the United States. We were supposed to have hosted our junior cadet world championships here in Salt Lake City. Unfortunately, that did not happen, as well as a lot of other things that we had on the plate here. But when you get to host things at home, that makes it a lot easier, because those athletes that you're looking to recruit are going to be on your soil, and then you can just arrange an official visit for them to come see your program, meet the members of your team, see your institution, and then make a decision that this is the best place in the world for them to be.
Can you talk about the official visit, and of course, like, do they get to try on their fencing uniforms on the official visit?
No, they don't. Official visits are really just a visit. There's no tryouts. There's no. I mean, it is a visit where they actually get to come. They experience the university. I really like the way, when they're done correctly, we have our academic advisors involved. We have our strength and conditioning folks involved. We have our nutritionists. We have our athletic trainers. And then when they're coming, if they have an idea what their major is, we bring an academic advisor or a representative from the school, and connect them with that, so they get a really good sense of, while they're on campus, what it's like, the college experience would be to be part of the OSU environment and to be a Buckeye. We also gives them the opportunity to stay with students when they come. So they will spend time with student athletes, so they get a sense of what their lifestyles. They get to go to some classes with them. So I would say the recruiting part is really more holistic from the standpoint of what the student athlete experience would be for them, and not nearly as much what the competitive experience. They get that in and out, and we have a sense of who they are. So that's not part of an official visit.
What advice would you give upcoming fencing players looking to make it into college?
I would say that first and foremost, make sure that you're academically strong. As I have to remind anybody in this process, you're a student athlete, not an athlete student. So the first part is just make sure that you're academically, prepared to be part of a rigorous program. And I will say that most of the schools that are really strong fencing programs are also very strong academic programs. And then the next part of that is focus on being as competitive as possible. And if you're in the top three in the world, or top three in the United States at your level, then you've got a shot to have somebody looking at recruiting you and offering you the opportunity to not only be able to compete, but also get some aid in paying for that education. And that I think that's the thing that is unique about your Div 1 programs, is that we do have that opportunity to provide the athletic aid that allows those students to be able to partake and participate at this level, who financially may not have been able to do that. And I'm always looking at, first of all, identifying who really wants to be here, and then trying to figure out how they can be part of something that they want to be. So create the relationships, start having the conversations, identify, where you want. When I go out to, when I speak with students, I say the first thing you have to do is decide, what college experience do you want? Do you want to be at a large institution? Do you want to be at a small institution? Do you want to be in an urban environment? Do you want to be in a rural environment? Do you want to be isolated? Do you want a very diverse team? Do you want a team that is very coming from one particular part of the world or the part of the country? So I think those are all the things. And what's the culture of the team? There's some teams where they want you there. They want you to do your job as an individual, and they could care less about whether they have a team spirit. For us, I want to create a relationship where athletes can come, where they can create, feel like they're part of a family, create relationships that'll last them a lifetime, and have the experience in those very precious 4 years where they get the most out of it, and that when they finish that, they're like, I wish I could do that again.
That's great advice. What advice would you give upcoming fencing coaches looking to get into college coaching and fencing?
I would say the first and foremost, really understand what it means to be a college coach, because it's very different than being a club coach. When you're a club coach, you're responsible strictly for the results of, the athlete, and maintaining a relationship with, whoever their support structure, whether it's their parents or grandparents or whatever that family is. As a college coach, you are responsible for many, many, many different things. And I think it would be important, if you want to break into this ring, beginning to understand, what that looks like. When I came from the outside world of fencing to collegiate, the NCAA world, the first thing that I realized was that the NCAA fencing does not resemble the global world of fencing at all, as far as the rules and the structure. And I think it's important that you accept that and embrace it, because if you embrace it, then you're able to work with it, and you're able to enhance the experience of your athletes. And you're also able to make sure that your program runs smoothly. So I would say a coach that wants to be part of this, the first and foremost is to really understand what the NCAA experience is. See if you can find an opportunity to be a volunteer assistant coach. I think that's probably the best way to get a sense of what this world looks like. And then I think the other part of it is making sure you establish the relationships with collegiate college coaches, any athletic directors, where their programs, or if you're fortunate enough, find a club where you can actually transition it from a club program to an NCAA program, and then you get to have the experience of building your own. And I think that that's another opportunity.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media, along with Ohio State Fencing at?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Where can my listeners find you at on social media, along with Ohio State Fencing?
Well, Ohio State Fencing is we're everywhere on social media. Under Buckeye Fencing. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I try to keep a very low social media profile. That I found that it's best to be too visible, but I'm on Facebook under my name, Donalad Anthony.
Thank you again, Donald, for your interview, and best of luck at Ohio State in the fencing program.
Thank you, Brandon, and it's been an honor to be a part of Brandon's Sport Talk. Keep up the good work, and I appreciate what you're doing as far as the world of sports.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Donald, for your interview, and best of luck at Ohio State.
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.